Yeah, so I mean, let's switch on to the next one. I'm not sure if you saw this on the news there in South Africa.
Yeah, so I didn't originally on the South African news, but then you sent me the link and I went onto Twitter and it was all over Twitter. So we found out about it pretty quickly, and that's the attack on the London Bridge. A very unfortunate terrorist attack to look like. The details are still pretty shady, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what happened. Chad, do you have a sense of? Can you give us a breakdown of what the event entailed?
Yeah, so I mean, just like you, I think Twitter was definitely one of my key source of information when the event actually happened. So I was basically just sitting at home. Obviously, it happened, on Friday afternoon, and I'm sort of starting my next role, kind of this kind of coming week. So it was just sitting at home and basically got a BBC push notification to say that there was a shooting, and essentially went on to do Twitter to see sort of all the videos and that kind of thing. So basically, what happened here is it has been labeled as a terrorist attack. Essentially, the person who sort of committed these stabbings was actually in prison before. They were caught as part of a group who were plotting to bomb the London Stock Exchange.
Wow.
So when this all happened, authorities basically assessed the whole situation and looked at the plans, and they basically concluded that some of these plans were quite rudimentary, and because of that, they weren't sure what sort of sentence to give, and kind of just weren't sure if this was just a group of people who would hopefully kind of grow up type of thing. So yeah, essentially they gave this one particular individual a 16-year sentence, and essentially in that time that the person was in prison, some of the regulations changed and they were released a little bit early. Part of this early release was that they were to be monitored on GPS monitoring, and I believe he had actually requested approval. So one of the conditions was that he could not come into London as part of this sort of probation period, and he had actually requested approval to go through to this event, which was a conference on prisoner rehabilitation. Sorry, did you have a question there, Barry?
No. I'm just curious. I'm enjoying this. Like that is a very, that's a challenging one, hey. Because how many of those people you want those conferences to happen? You want these prisoners to be reformed, and you want to give the support structures needed for guys coming out of prison.
Yeah.
But something like this happens, and that's the reason that they gave to get into London, and all of a sudden it puts that whole project at risk. I would think.
100%. So here we are. There's a room of people all in this conference on prisoner rehabilitation, and from what I've heard, all of a sudden this guy starts kind of stabbing a bunch of people. So basically it developed from there where he kind of left the building and worked his way onto the sort of London Bridge, and I believe a bunch of civilians essentially went chasing after the guy. One person even had a massive tusk in his hand, and civilians essentially held this guy down. Basically, obviously, the police were called, and within 5 minutes, they responded to the scene. It was confirmed that the police didn't have any intelligence on this attack, so it was kind of an off-the-cuff response, which is really, really good to know.
Yeah.
Essentially, with all of that, there was some sort of fear that he may have been wearing a vest, in which case I think that was the sort of reason for their response in terms of walking, trying to get everyone off, keeping a bit of distance from the guy, and ultimately they sort of made the decision to shoot, shoot to kill, essentially.
Yeah, I think from what I read, I think he did have a fake vest on, so it wasn't just like there was suspicion, like they saw a vest on, and they found out post the event that there was a fake one. But in that kind of situation, it's very hard to know, and tempers are flaring, and you don't know what's going to happen. And London Bridge is obviously a key part of London. Lots of people around, and so there's actually a video of when they shot the guy, and it's quite a rough video to watch. And I was saying to a friend of mine, I don't remember ever seeing British police shoot at anybody. Like I'm sure it's happened in the past, but it's not something that happens often, and it definitely is an anomaly. And so there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of debate around was it the right decision, was it the wrong decision. And obviously with hindsight, it's amazing because you can learn all these things about the person. You can learn about his history, his background. You can look at the fact that the vest was fake and whatnot. But in the heat of the moment, it's a fight or flight kind of response. And you hope the police have been trained as best they can to assess the situation. but they can never have all the information.
Well, that's the thing. And I think, yeah, as you mentioned, it's going to be interesting to see whether that was or wasn't the right decision. Obviously, it being a tough one because, terrorist attacks in London have in recent years, obviously, lots of people have lost their lives. And ultimately, when you have, a person who's going around stabbing people, who has taken the decision to put on a fake vest, when he woke up that morning, it is a tough call in terms of whether that was the right or wrong. But certainly we will see. In terms of answering your sort of question there a little bit earlier, in terms of them all being at a prisoner rehabilitation conference. I think the very interesting one here is one of the civilians who actually held this man down was released from prison, I believe, the week before, within the week.
Wow.
On a count of murder. He had murdered a lady however many years back. And again, on the subject of sort of redemption and rehabilitation, here he is basically helping prevent further injury from this attacker. What do you think about that?
That's very interesting. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make, is that whenever these things happen, you worry that the anecdote of this one event is going to impact the decisions made on a macro level. And often you don't hear about the thousands of prisoners who were released from prison and had reformed their lives and had made their lives something better and had got back to society and kind of righted some of the wrongs that they inflicted on society. And so it's always important to remember that these anecdotes are often sensationalized in the media. They are blown up to huge proportions, and you don't hear about the thousands of cases that went the other way. And so while it's a very, very dangerous kind of argument sometimes, and it's a very hot debate, it's nice to hear things like that, where someone who has been reformed from prison and has kind of righted their wrongs is able to be involved in something like that.
Definitely. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, certainly on the law front. There's been lots of calls to look at how these types of cases, terrorist-related cases, are treated in terms of prison sentences, the actual monitoring, following release, all of those types of things. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But certainly, for the people of London, I think absolutely tragic that two young people lost their lives. I believe they were Cambridge students in their early 20s. So sure. Absolutely tragic for them and their families. We will definitely just have to see what happens in terms of the laws, and in terms of the police response. I think they definitely should be congratulated for that, and certainly a statement coming out from the Queen thanking the civilians as well who risked their lives in ultimately keeping this person on the ground. So yeah, that was definitely something tragic to hear about, and hopefully we won't see anything like that again.
Yeah, let's hope so. And condolences to all the families who were involved. It's always a tough situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across the pond with Barry and Chad.